મઠા માળું ને મઠા સાટા. મઠા મીન્સ સ્વીટ, મીઠું. એટલે મીઠા માણસો, એના માણસો બહુ મીઠા હોય છે. મીઠા માણસો ને મઠા સાટા. સાટા ઇઝ અ કાઇન્ડ ઓફ સ્વીટ. મઠા માળું ને મઠા સાટા. ભર ઉનાળો ને માઠા છંઠા. ભર ઉનાળો ઇઝ સમર્સ. માઠા છંટા, છંટા ઇઝ લાઇક સ્મોલ રેનફોલ્સ. ભર ઉનાળો ને માઠા છંટા. ચોફેર સ્મિત ને મન में विघ्न हरता. ચોફેર, every surrounding there is smith, happiness, smiles. मन में विघ्न हरता is Ganesh ji. ચોફેર સ્મિત ને મન में विघ्न हरता. गुलाबी ठंडी ने गरम चर्चा. So heading to the next session, I would like to invite our chairpersons, Dr. N.N. Bhadarka sir, Dr. Gopal Hirani sir, Dr. Chandrakant Thakkar sir, and Dr. Naresh Bhanushali sir. Our next faculty, actually he doesn't need any introduction. फिर भी formality के लिए या जो भी हमारे rituals हैं इनके लिए I would like to introduce him. Dr. Bhaveshi sir, Dr. Himanshu Bhaveshi sir, he has been awarded the most prestigious IMA award, Excellence in the Field of Medicine. First childbirth of India with vitrified frozen oocyte. He has written many books. One of them is A Practical Guide to Intrauterine Insemination. BFI, Bhaveshi Fertility Institute, has organized many conferences, CMEs, and workshops and teaching programs. He has published many books on patient awareness and organized many patient awareness seminars and programs, including IVF Baby Meet in 2004. He was the founder president in STAR, Indian Society for Third Party Assisted Reproductive Techniques. Overall, he is a gem of a person, a very good mentor, my teacher. दो शब्द अपने टीचर के लिए. एक કબીરનો દોહો છે कि गुरु गोविंद दो खड़े काके लागू पाए. गुरु और गोविंद दोनों हैं सामने. कबीर कंफ्यूज हो कि किसके पाँव छूं. बलिहारी गुरु आपके, गोविंद दियो बताए. So for my mentor, Dr. Himanshu Bhaveshi sir, I would like to invite you sir on the stage. Mic is all yours.
So the kind of warmth you get here, you don't get anywhere else. And that is why Kutch keeps on inviting us to come again and again and again. And the shawl which you gave to me, or honor, whatever you call it, in 1999, every winter I use it still. Every winter. Because that's the most beautiful shawl I could have in my life till this date. Pashmina, anything you, એ આની પાસે પાણી ભરે એમ કહેવાય. So that's why I'm here again to. So first of all, the workshop started very humbly, and that is very, very good, because our first speaker was so generous to say very frankly, not the first, I mean, sorry, second speaker, the urologist, that he talked about varicocele and clarified that only these varicoceles need surgeries, rest of the varicoceles don't need surgery. He also said that no urologist is interested in becoming andrologist. And that is a fact. If you know urologist, you will know the same fact. And that is where it is very important that at least we understand male infertility more. We treat our patients of male infertility so far as non-surgical management is concerned. We identify the patients who need surgical correction, and then only we send them to for the correction. So talking about the endometrium, the character, synchronization and receptivity, these are the two few important things. When we talk of character, thickness, morphology and blood flow. When we talk of thickness, we all have now transvaginal sonography, and it's very easy for us to see. Most important thing is be sure that you are in longitudinal section of the uterus, so you correctly measure it. Otherwise, you may wrongly measure it. More than 8 millimeter is good. I don't believe more than 14 is bad or this bad or that bad. Personally, that is not my experience. But some people believe that beyond 14 is not a good endometrium. 8 to 14. 7 to 8 we consider okay, treatable, if no need to worry much, and below 7 is less. Then whatever less is less. But people have got pregnancies with endometrium as thin as 4 millimeter, 5 millimeter, 6 millimeter, etc. So again, not only people, I have personally got pregnancies and live birth with very, very poor endometrium also. The endometrium who had only few patches of endometrium, not even measurable in terms of thickness, have delivered the babies. So never say a poor endometrium, you cannot have a baby. The chances definitely change. There is no doubt about it. The second is morphology, and we know this grade A, B, and C. Good character is very important, and so many times you see an endometrium which is thick, white, homogeneous, and you feel thickness is very good. So you have to be sure that the character is good. And number two, the endometrium, if you are not sure whether this is an endometrium or an Asherman syndrome or something which is persistent, evaluate the endometrium post period. If it is thin post period, that means that pathology or that character of the endometrium was in that particular cycle, not permanent. And if you see that the endometrium does not become thin in spite of periods and all, that means there is a definite pathology in the endometrium which you should address first and then go ahead further. Then blood flow, of course, we all know this Applebaum scoring, zone 1, 2, 3, and 4. And Dr. Chandrakant Bhai was talking to me just before we started the presentation, and he was asking me, how much importance do you give to blood flow of endometrium? અને મેં એમને ગુજરાતી ભાષામાં જવાબ આપ્યો કે 32 લક્ષણા પેશન્ટ આપણી પાસે આવતા જ નથી. They conceive on their own. આપણી પાસે the patients who come to us have some or the other problem, difficulties, then only they come to us for treatment. So it is not necessary that you will always have an ideal blood flow of endometrium and then only the patient will conceive. Good is good, not good is not good, but again, not good does not mean that there will be no pregnancy. You try to improve, you try to counsel, whatever, that's okay. But never refuse or never postpone based on this, except for you see that problem accidentally in that particular cycle. Yes, this patient was good, her endometrium was good, this time it is not good. Then maybe something went wrong, postpone or cancel the cycle, do it again. This is the same picture of the endometrial blood flow. Again, one very more important thing, if you want to evaluate the endometrial blood flow, you must have very good sonography machine. So if your sonography machine is not capable of picking up the blood flow, you are not going to get it. So a sonography machine beyond some caliber or level or whatever you call it, then only you are going to get the endometrial blood flow. Then of course, if you need, you can use the surrogate marker of uterine, artery, PI, etc. And so many people, as I said, cancel the treatment or postpone the embryo transfers, which we don't believe. Then is endometrium volume. Again, this is આપણે કલોથું કે and it's little bit કંટાળાજનક or little bit cumbersome. But if you have good 3D sonography machine, it's not very cumbersome. But it is not routinely practiced. If the volume, this is useful when it is very patchy, very irregular, only a few patches of endometrium, and you want to evaluate that what is the quality of endometrium. Then you measure the volume of the endometrium, and 3 to 7 millimeter is good. The question comes, why the endometrium is thin? And that is the most important thing we should think before we should. The commonest practice, what we see in our practice, is that the moment the patient comes to us, we start the treatment and keep on evaluating. Now, if you you have never seen the endometrium of the patient, you don't have any records of endometrium, and all of a sudden when you are treating, the endometrium is thin, and you say, "Anu to endometrium thin chhe." It may not be true. So in our practice, we never start any IVF treatment unless we are sure that the patient's endometrium is good. If patient has a recent record of ovulation study or endometrium and it is good, then fine. If she doesn't have, we treat, gives a low dose or whatever, the standard dose of estrogen, see the endometrium. If we are sure, then only we take the patient for cycle, so that we can counsel. All of a sudden, middle of the cycle, we tell the patient that everything is good, but your endometrium is not good, that I would not like to do. And that's where that is the practice. And very important is the sonohystogram. It's very easy to perform. You can straight away perform in your own OPD without doing anything. And you can see that saline infusion sonography, you can see like this, if this is a poor endometrium, still the cavity is completely filled, That means there are no many adhesions. The endometrium is damaged. You may be able to help, may not be able to help, but there are no much adhesion. It's not Asherman syndrome. Then, of course, you can pick up polyps, multiple polyps, submucous fibroid, which you can see. And whenever there is a doubt, particularly when the endometrium is not good and you are seeing the pathology, you may not be sure that the fibroid is intramural more or submucous more. Just infuse a little bit of saline in the cavity and you will see very nicely where it is. Then thin endometrium and implantation, it's because the poor quality of endometrium, the blood flow and other things are damaged. Thin endometrium may be iatrogenic and that always should be avoided, as we all know that vigorous curettage for whatever DNC or MTP or abortions, missed abortion, etc. Now we practically don't use current in any of the hysteroscopy surgeries. Even for small submucous fibroids, we lift them with the help of scissor, make some niche, lift it and just take it out. Just like what you do in laparoscopic myomectomy, you dissect the fibroid, take it out, and then whatever is the size, depending on that, you can take it out. Only big submucous fibroids we use the current. Any size of septum, any size of other things, we don't use current. So this was we have been doing for many years. Probably we started this as a pioneering effort to treat all these pathologies without current. Caesar is little more expensive than, of course, you use the current, but that is worth because you are doing minimum damage to the endometrium. And of course the intrauterine manipulations, etc. Then iatrogenic patient might not have given you the history like she is taking oral contraceptive for 3 months, 4 months, etc. Clomiphene she has taken long time before she came to you. Chemotherapy downregulation, all these situations which lower estrogen in the body of the patient might cause poor endometrium. So you should be sure and you should rule it out. Now you diagnose poor endometrium, what will you do? Like you can see that the endometrium is poor. The first, of course, as I said, it should not be misdiagnosed poor endometrium. So once you are sure that the endometrium is poor, you gave estrogen and still the endometrium is poor, then the first line I prefer is hysteroscopy and ruling out the infections. Hysteroscopy features, we all know irregular cavity, internal adhesions, scanty endometrium, calcifications, caseations, periosteal fibrosis, ostia not visible. And of course, we can see the tuber. If we are simultaneous doing laparoscopy, then you may see other features of tuberculosis on laparoscopy. And to diagnose tuberculosis in endometrium, our preferred method is to do a gene expert test. We take a biopsy, which I'll show you in a video. And if there is a doubt of tuberculosis, we all know that whatever the damage is done, and that is why it's very important that we treat these patients as early and as effective as possible. This is the American Fertility Society classification for what we call as gradation of adhesions, what we see in the uterus. It is type of adhesion, menstrual pattern, and extent of cavity involved. These are the 3 parameters which are decided, and depending on less than 1/3, 1/3 to 2/3 and more than 2/3, the scoring method is there, and this is the interpretation of the scoring. How would you prevent Asherman syndrome after any surgeries? Medically, give good dose of estrogen so that the endometrium grows up well, covers the whatever the raw areas, and then there is a minimum chance of recurrence of adhesions. And second one is to put intrauterine devices. I am not very happy with putting intrauterine devices, but still that was a practice and still being practiced, and newer devices are being also made that where you can fan shaped device and all. But I personally have not been very happy with those things. But if you believe in, you can keep it for a very short time, not for a long time, till the endometrium recovers. And this is what is also very important, that you must, as I said earlier also, before taking any patients for surgery, you must evaluate the endometrium first, counsel the patient that this is the baseline endometrium, nothing more is there, or whatever the good situation, moderate situation, bad situation, worse situation, and whatever we do, whatever is the reasonable expected difference, then only we can do, so that the patient does not blame you later કે સાહેબ તમે તો મારું યુટ્રસ બગાડી નાખ્યું, એન્ડોમેટ્રિયમ બગાડી નાખ્યું, સર્જરી પછી મને આવું થઈ ગયું વગેરે વગેરે. So if we have done best effort to evaluate, then counsel, then correct, that's the right policy. Second look hysteroscopy is required in some patients where you could do good correction and you expect it to improve, and there is bound to be some recurrence of adhesion. Again you do a hysteroscopy, you can still further improve those patients. This is a simpler case for easy viewing and understanding, not a very difficult case. You can see the adhesions on the lateral wall at the fundus. You can see the osteas are not very clear and good. You can see periosteal fibrosis as well. And then we are cutting with the help of scissors on lateral wall, on fundus, on another lateral wall. And then this you can see what we are doing is subendometrial PRP injection. This we do at 4 sites, 1, 2, 3 and 4. 4 spots you can see where we inject with the help of a needle prepared PRP injection. So this is the video of the same procedure. Now why PRP injection? We all know that the results of PRP may or may not be good. It always is going to be a debate that we should do it or we should not do it. But particularly when we don't have a definite solution, then do no harm is the first theory, and PRP does not do harm. That's the first advantage. Because it is an autologous thing, we don't inject anything from outside, it's patient's own material. So it doesn't do harm at least. So that is first advantage. Second advantage is it's very easy. You take blood of the patient, you have special preparation methods, you prepare it and you inject it. Anyway, you are doing hysteroscopy, so it doesn't take more than a minute or two to inject the subendometrial PRP. So that is the second thing. The advantage may or may not be very good, but at least we have not seen any harm in more than 200-300 cases we have done. So we have not seen any harm. Improvement is subjective and variable. So it is not that every patient improves or dramatically improves or a very great improvement. એટલે આપણે પેશન્ટને ગુજરાતી ભાષામાં કાઉન્સેલ કરતા હોઈએ તો 16-20-18-20નો ડિફરન્સ પડશે, or there will be a marginal improvement or a little bit of improvement, but there will not be any harm. So that is why we prefer to do PRP. Same for ovarian PRP also. The only competition or comparison is between stem cell and PRP, because regenerative, there are the two options we have. Stem cell is much more invasive, much more expensive, requires lot of legal procedures to approval and do it the procedure. Whereas this is very simple, much less, cost-wise very less expensive and almost the same success. So our preference so far as the ovarian rejuvenation is concerned or endometrial, subendometrial PRP injection is concerned, we prefer PRP as a line of treatment. You can see that we use only scissors. You introduce your scissor in a controlled manner. It's your choice. You go from one lateral wall, fundus, to the another lateral wall, or do both lateral walls, then do fundus, or do fundus first, but lateral wall. But first lateral wall helps you to do fundus better, because once you cut the adhesions on lateral wall, the ostium becomes more visible and you can do a better surgery. So that's the advantage. You are not using any current here. You can see that we don't use any current here. It is to be done controlled, because so many times when the anatomy is altered, you can easily perforate the uterus. So you have to be very careful. You watch both the ostia go from one ostium to the another. You may have to do 1 or 3 rounds of cutting, but do a small piece of cutting. You saw that we took a small piece for the biopsy. The last, the grasper, we could take a small piece for the biopsy. Sorry. It's not going far forward. So then we do, as I said, the PRP injections. PRP in endometrium, which we have, I talked to you. 3 students have dissertations at our hospital for PRP in endometrium and ovary, and our success rate with PRP was good and satisfactory, because PRP is not done in good endometrium cases. We do only in the patients where the endometrium is poor. And if the endometrium is poor and if you are getting this success rate is good, 32.14 live birth rate per cycle. Stem cell we already discussed. Adjuvants. When we don't have any options or definite option, we always try to experiment with different options. Adjuvants, sildenafil, you can try with marginal improvement. L-arginine again, same different principle, but aspirin is something which is really worth, and we can try. HCG. HCG has a direct action. If you instill HCG in endometrium, then it has a paracrine action. And if you give in a very low dose in the follicular phase, which low dose HCG at least still not available in our country, so it's very difficult to give low dose. GnRH analogs, because GnRH analogs help naturally secrete LH surges, and that might help the luteal phase and better quality of endometrium in those patients. Same as GCSF, earlier we used to do GCSF, but after PRP we prefer to do PRP. But subendometrial PRP you cannot do again and again because it's a surgical procedure. So if you just want to do instillation in the uterus, you have the option of GCSF or PRP. You can give GCSF subcutaneous as well. Last but not the least is the endometrium receptivity array. So ERA became very popular at one point of time because we are always in search of finding some reason why IVF fails in a particular patient. But unfortunately, it did not serve the purpose. First of all, it was not very good in that way that you have to do or mimic the entire IVF cycle exactly the way you want to do the next time. So it wasted 1 month of time, the medicines, the whole procedure. Then you need to collect the sample by a biopsy. So it involved a biopsy. And then again, the study of ERA is also quite expensive, more than 30,000, 35,000 rupees. So that was the additional cost. And every cycle is different. We know that every cycle in a human body is different. And that is where the prediction of ERA, which is the implantation window, is not accurate. And that is why the it is analysis accurate. This is the what we can say the guideline that simply says ERA is useless. So we don't prefer to do ERA unless some patient from somewhere comes and says mare to karavu chhe sahib, because sometimes it is promoted so heavily that the patients feel कि आ तो करवू ज पड़े. Otherwise we don't prefer to do ERA. And of course, whatever best you do, if it doesn't work or it doesn't improve or patient does not become pregnant, then of course we have surrogacy. Surrogacy is perfectly legal. So it's not that surrogacy is not legal. We will have an entire session in the afternoon, what is the act and who can avail, etc., etc. But it is perfectly legal. Only question is that the legal formalities have become very lengthy, and that is why the cost and length of treatment has increased, but it is very, very much legal. And of course the uterine transplant. Unfortunately, uterine transplant is put on hold at the time, but India has done uterine transplant, successfully delivered the baby as well. But again, there is a disadvantage. Patient has to go for if the patient has uterus, then she has to go for hysterectomy. The donor has to go for hysterectomy. Then donor's uterus is transplanted into the abdomen of the recipient. Then she becomes pregnant. Then cesarean section for delivery. And then after some time removing uterus so that she does not have to take immunosuppressants for the life. So 4 or 5 surgeries are involved and success rate is still limited. But the people who never want surrogacy or it is not an acceptable option for them, then this is an option which might work good. So the first thing which I said, never say never in any of the poor endometrium patients. Give them genuine picture. I don't say that you say that બધું સરસ છે ને થઈ જશે, not that way. But just because the endometrium poor, you cannot conceive is a wrong feeling. Thank you so much for your patient hearing.
Thank you so much, sir. Any questions?
Sir, what is your experience regarding estradiol, hemihydrate and valate?
બંને કાકા બાપાના ભાઈ છે. There is no difference at all. So far as the success rate, tolerability, everything is the same. Everything is the same. There is no difference. Yes. Our experience in transferring natural cycle is very good. I was talking to Dr. Chandrakant Patel just before we started our. Okay. Hello. Our experience of natural cycle frozen embryo transfer is very good. And this probably I forgot to speak in my presentation also. If you have patients where you give exogenous estrogen and the endometrium is not coming up, give them a chance of natural cycle. Induce ovulation without the drugs like not clomiphene, either natural or gonadotropins. So many patients, not hundreds, but a few percentage of patients definitely produce better endometrium in their own endogenous estrogen cycle than whatever bombardment of exogenous estrogen you may do. So that is one of the things. So we really don't know what is the difference, but there is a difference. And that difference is very important. And that is particularly, it is helping in natural cycle IVF or embryo transfers. We do a lot. The only problem is the timing, planning. It's little more difficult in some cases. Otherwise, it is definitely good. Yes.
Regarding tuberculosis identification in the endometrium, what you suggested, what investigation you advised to the person?
When I was a resident, we used to do tuberculin test positive, AKT to the patient. This was an era. Now it is not possible because we live in completely different era. And if you want to give empirical anti-tuberculous drug, you have to counsel the patient a lot. You have to take consent. Maybe you take opinion also. You give empirical heparin, that's okay. But empirical AKT is not okay. So preferably, we would do what I said, preferably is the, earlier we used to do TB gold also, a few years before. But now we don't rely on TB gold also. We prefer to do endometrial biopsy, try to document that there is an evidence of tuberculosis, and then only. Or if we see tuberculous situation on hysteroscopy, but don't find gene expert positive, then that situation that we counsel the patient, tell the patient your endometrium is poor, whatever we have tried is not working, would you like to take empirical AKT?
About biopsy, how to collect and which media and how to preserve it on the what day? Better to take biopsy.
When you have good endometrium, that's the best thing. But suppose some patients are not very keen on biopsies, then we can take menstrual blood also. So we've done so many cases where we take menstrual blood also. But if possible, we take endometrial biopsy. There is a special kit for that. In that you preserve and send it to the laboratory. They provide you the kit in which you can keep it and send it.
Is it okay with normal saline or some special?
Of course. Yes, we have done that also many times. Premenstrual biopsies, be very sure that you take the consent of the patient that we did not try to conceive this month. You never know whether they tried or not, but you have taken the consent. So tomorrow the patient does not say that you disturbed my pregnancy.
change in the consistency or appearance of the
So these are the two different pathologies patient is harboring at the same time. Probably it has nothing to do with PCOD. It is the problem with endometrium only which you are dealing with. But as I said, in this is a very good case where you do ovulation induction and see. If you can do ovulation induction, if you see good follicle, then if the patient develops endometrium, then you have a chance that this endometrium is okay. But if that also doesn't happen, that means the pathology is at the endometrium level and you have to handle it accordingly. Most likely is tuberculosis. Most likely is tuberculosis. When you see calcified spots, caseations, most likely is tuberculosis.
One possibility is that retained products of conception.
And you will see those kind of situations, so many patients where they are, means when you see the patient, you see them entire lining of endometrium with spots, but when you do saline infusion, they will be inside the myometrium, not in the cavity. And they are the worst patient because there you cannot help much also. Even if you do adhesiolysis, whatever you do, the damage is so deep that the roots are damaged and the pathology has gone quite deep into the myometrium level as well. So you do saline infusion, the adhesions or the spots are not actually very close to the cavity, but they are deep in the myometrium. So that also is one of the important points. You should transfer day 6 blastocyst. There is no doubt about that in my mind because it's a PCO patient. It has a risk of OHSS if you stimulate the patient. You already have the blastocyst. Day 6 blastocyst is very common. It's not very uncommon. But what we do, probably you also may be doing the same. Even if you are transferring day 6 blastocyst, you consider them as day 5 blastocyst so far as the progesterone priming is concerned before embryo transfer. We don't prime according to day 6. We consider them as day 5 blastocyst so far as the transfer procedure is concerned. But day 6 is perfectly okay if they are good quality. PCO makathi natural karse sir. Because it's a PCO patients. So thank you very much. Over to you, please.